All right, welcome back, everyone. This is another great episode of Beneath the Helmet, Season 2. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I have a chance to sit down with a former firefighter who is now pivoted into the tech world. I'm going to sit down with Andrew Douglas. So Andrew Douglas is the co-founder of Siento, which is a tech company and an app for fire departments across North America. It specializes in a peer support system and allowing people to have a very confidential, private way to manage their own mental health. Andrew shares some great nuggets and wisdom that he experienced through his darkest days to where he is today, thriving in his business. We talk a little bit about different therapies. We talk a lot about how the app was formed around needs of his own personal well-being, and also his kind of life-changing experience in Costa Rica with psychedelics and how that changed his life and eliminated his ego, and a lot of amazing transitions in his life. So I hope you enjoy this great episode with Andrew. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Until next time, stay well.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Another great episode on Beneath the Helmet, Season 2. Today I got Andrew Douglas with me today. So welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, brother.
Awesome. So tell our listeners a little bit about who Andrew is and kind of your history of your growing up and into the fire service and kind of what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I grew up, I was one of those kids who knew he wanted to be a firefighter since kindergarten, right? And so I dedicated my, I guess you could say, teen years and young adult life to achieving that dream. And so ultimately I followed it and I was successful in it. And I started out in Washington State in a rural fire department, and they sent me through paramedic school, so I kind of did both the best worlds, I guess you could say. For some people, not everybody wants to be a paramedic, but for me, I really enjoyed like giving back to my community and the medicine side of things as well as the fire side of things. And through that time, was exposed to some things that really affected me, and I didn't realize it. And then from there, I went to a new department, a new bigger department, right, to be busier. And things for me personally got to a pretty bad point where, I had a suicide attempt in 2019 and then realized like, hey, something's really wrong with me. And I ultimately made the difficult decision to walk away from the job that I loved. And what I learned was my identity of who I was. And then I just floundered a little bit of like, what am I going to do with my life? Because my purpose that I had before is now gone. And so that's when I came up with the idea of Siento, which is what actually my co-founder is Canadian. He's on the East Coast. And so we came up with the idea, and it's kind of evolved and really has been driven by, fire departments, police departments that have like showed us the way of like, how can we help this mental health problem that we have going on in North America and actually the world.
100%. Yeah, it's not slowing down, unfortunately. A lot of work we're doing behind the scenes and out in front of everyone, and still seems to be an issue that we're challenged with, right? So, but we're not going to give up, right? We're not going to give up. No.
Well, I have to say, you guys up north in BC are leading the way by far. Steve Farina and the BC professional firefighters have been doing really impressive things, to the point where I'm like, if I talk to people that are trying to set up a peer support team or I always reference what you guys are doing, because it's not only like the reactive piece, but you're really working on the proactive, like upstream work.
For sure.
How do we get our new firefighters that come in? I think, I started in 2005, and I imagine you started a bit before that, but we were raised in a generation of like, keep your mouth shut, like your feelings don't matter. And you still need to have that. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, when you're new, you need to learn, but giving our firefighters tools early on to be able to cope with the things that we're going to experience, that's inevitable, to be able to live healthy lives and have healthy relationships, and hopefully not get to where I got to.
How long you been out of the service now? Active duty?
Oh, I'm coming on like almost 3 years.
3 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you went back today, how would Andrew show up differently?
Oh man, that's a great question. Um, I think if I went back today, really what I would want to do different is I would want to be more open
Mm.
with my struggles. I had a really, really, really supportive captain at the end. Um, what I failed to do was really open up to other people. Um, I think, I say that, by sharing our stories with people, by having these conversations and talking openly about our challenges is very powerful. It's a powerful message. And through that, like, vulnerability it causes a contagion, right? It spreads.
Love it.
And
Yeah.
so I was open in some ways, but I was very closed off. I would try to be more open with my crews. But also, like, as a leader, try to step up and, like, start to have those conversations. You go on a tough run. It's not like, hey, how you doing? Like, that's everybody's gonna say fine, right? And then I probably quit drinking too. I
Mm.
would have quit drinking a long time. I mean, I don't drink anymore
Mm.
personally.
Mm.
I realized, like, how big of a coping mechanism it was for me of my feelings and emotions, to the point now where I'm like, I don't even have a desire to ever drink
Mm.
again, because I realized why I was doing what I was doing.
Mm.
So I'd probably
Yeah.
stop drinking too.
Love it. Yeah, there's not much good in drinking, is there? Honestly, like maybe in the moment, in that 5 minutes that you're taking that first sip, but after that, it's like, yeah, it provides no value for our well-being. That's for sure.
Well, and this might be, some of your viewers might find this a little controversial, but
Mhm.
I think we need to look at changing our culture, because I think about, like, any event was drinking related, right? So we revolve everything around drinking, and I just don't think that that's a healthy way of living life. Like, we can have fun together without drinking. Um, it's easier said than done because it's culturally, like, acceptable, but I feel like nowadays, right, like, they have, like, all these, like, non-alcoholic beers
Mm.
that taste like an IPA,
Yep.
so it looks like you're drinking a beer. You can still have that social aspect, but I think we really need to reevaluate, like, our drinking, as a culture, both in fire and law enforcement, EMS. It's across the board.
Yep. I agree 100%. So you would stop drinking, you'd be a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more open with your crews. Anything else kind of pop in your mind, or is that kind of how you would show up differently?
Um, that I would say that's, like, how I would
Mhm.
show up a lot differently,
Nice.
right? I'd spend a lot of time hiding,
Mm.
right? And this is, like, I think if I was more, like, if I noticed this more in other people that I've seen, right, I would be like, okay, that person's struggling. But,
Mm.
like, I had, like, no energy on shift to do anything but, like, be good at my job when the time called, right? And so I would go, like, nap a
Mm.
lot.
Mhm.
We were a busy house and we ran a lot of calls at night, so it was kind of, okay to take a nap, right? But I, like, did that to a whole nother level.
Right.
So um that's actually definitely one thing I now that we're talking about, I kind of regret, or I don't regret, it is what it is, but if I could go back, I would still have tried to been involved more in the house, at the end of my career. But I was just so, like, emotionally drained
Mhm.
that, like, I just didn't have the energy to interact with people.
For sure. Yep. I feel you there for sure. The batteries were depleted and the energy was non-existent. Yes. So did your departure, do you think that helped anyone in your organization? That kind of, did it open up anything new, as around the realms of mental health awareness, or did it kind of just another person gone, and kind of moving on? Or do you think there was some change after you left?
I don't think there's a bunch of change, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know another couple people that are my department are going through some stuff, right? And they were really supportive, right? Like I had a lot of support from them. So I don't want to downplay that. I think the hardest thing, or what I experienced was that like, and I think it's just with mental health in general, like people don't understand how to reach out to somebody because they don't know what to say. And I would challenge people to say that that is actually doing the wrong thing versus reaching out and saying like, hey bro, I'm here for you if you need anything. Like I'm thinking of you, right? Like that's what I do. Like I have a lot of like retirees or people in the service that are, wanting somebody to talk with that'll reach out to me. And then I just kind of continually check in on them. Like, hey, you don't need to respond. Like, I just want you to know I'm here. Right. So like I didn't have that. And that would have been really nice to have when when you're alone and in darkness.
For sure. 100%. It's a lonely spot to be, isn't it? I'm curious about, you talked about what you would change if you could kind of relive that over again. But what lessons would you tell somebody about leaving the fire service, and kind of what were some of the challenges of leaving the fire service prematurely? Because that was my situation as well. An easy 5, 8 years before I really wanted to leave. And I know a lot of the people that I coach right now have a real challenge of trying to figure out, is it time for me to leave? Is it time for me to hang up my helmet? What kind of nuggets would you share with our listener today of making that tough decision?
Well, you're going to be alone.
Mm.
Like it's going to feel very lonely because you're going from this environment of like family in the firehouse, right? To then all of a sudden like having a bunch of time on your hands and not knowing what you're going to do. So I would say, like in preparing to leave, like obviously mine was somewhat abrupt. I mean, it was kind of, the writing was on the wall, but like prepare yourself to have like a good support network of people that you can reach out to. I would personally like to see departments stepping up a little bit more with peer support for actual retirees. And there are some that are doing it, but it's not across the board. And it's a really lonely place, right? Like I feel like some people can handle that change and some can't, right? And so just having that support network is so important. And having healthy coping mechanisms. It's been very interesting, and I don't know if you've experienced this personally, like some other calls that I'd like suppressed had come out after I left. And then I hear that a lot from other retirees is like, man, I'm really struggling way more than I was on the job. And it's like, well, it's probably because you've been suppressing it for all these years. And now that you have this time on your hands, um, so yeah, I would say,
And maybe back to energy as well, right? Now you have the energy to actually think about those, and time. It takes some time to, focus on what's actually popping up in your emotions in your mind, right? Versus just being so busy, right? Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But I think it's, I'm in a different generation than the people that are actually retiring, right? Like on time, I guess you could say, in that like I feel like my generation is more in touch with their feelings and emotions, right? And like it's just a different, as a millennial, it's like a different time frame in life. And so there was unique challenges with that for me, especially when it's your identity, right? I feel like a lot of retirees in general, like eh, being a firefighter is who they are as a person. And it's like having to realize like, no, who am I as a person, right? Like who, what do I stand for? Like who am I? And I had to really go through that. That was a challenge as well. So like having a good idea of who you are, and that being a firefighter isn't your identity is so important.
So true. It's one of the hardest things to actually wrap our head around. We all know that. We all kind of talk about that. Hey, I'm not just a firefighter. I'm a dad. I'm a mom or whatever, right? But easy thing to say, hard to actually commit to and live, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing that really helped me through my recovery is like faith, right? Like
Mhm.
having faith. And I don't like to get into religion too much, but like Buddhism like talks a lot about how everything's meant to change, right? And the only thing that we have is like our own actions, like what we do with our life. And so one thing I don't think a lot of people think about is like what are our core values as human beings, right? Like when we talk about like what is our identity or who we are, like I believe that you are what your values are, because your identity could be a father or a mother or a firefighter or whatever is what you think your identity is, but all that's meant to change, right?
Mhm.
And so really knowing like what your core values are of what drives you and like who you are as a person is like so important. And like I personally I have in my wallet, I carry it with me every day, is like my goals. So I write down my goals of like what I want to accomplish, but then I also like write down my core values, and mine are compassion, accountability, loyalty, and family. And so trying to remind myself like every day when I look at these goals of like, okay, here's what I want to accomplish, but also remind myself of like who I am. And I'm not perfect. I don't always follow my own moral compass, I guess you could say. Like, I don't think it's
Mhm.
realistic as human beings to be perfect. But it's just like written down for me to like really reflect on.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, not a lot of people in the fire service talk about values, their own personal values. They talk about the service values, and then also just your own personal, what you stand for in life, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very sheltered. So going back in time on that in 2019 when you attempted your own life, was there any support for you after that, or did you leave the fire service right after that attempt?
No, so again, I like I said, I had a pretty good support from my department. So we had a peer support team at that time. I reached out to my brother, that was somebody who I knew had been through some stuff, and like that was the only person I could. My ex, like when she took the gun away, she's like freaking out of like who should I call, and I'm freaking out, right? And like all I could think of was like just call this brother, right?
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say his name,
Mhm.
um, and I'm not gonna say his name because it's been pretty cool in that I'm kind of emotional saying this. Like that same person like reached out to me for help, and and to be able to give that back to somebody who helped save my life was like it felt like karmic and good in a way. And that's what like I see the power in peer support is that right there, right? Is that first line of defense when somebody's struggling to get them to the resources they needed. And so we only had an EAP at that time. Don't even get me started on that. I think EAP is the most I've learned a lot of things about what EAPs are and how not only like with my experience, right? Like I called, it took me weeks to get in, which we already know that's a challenge across North America getting into a provider. I made her cry and she told me, I can't help you. So like where am I to turn now, right? And so what I've learned a lot about EAPs is that they they underpay these providers a ridiculous amount. Like it's really upsets me to think about how they're treating the providers that are supposed to be taking care of me and you. They're paying them pennies on the dollar. And then, I know there's some that are coming out with like, I hate using the word culturally competent providers, right? But providers that understand what me and you face.
Mhm.
Like there are some services that are coming out there, but I just don't think it's there yet, like, at scale to like help people. But traditional EAPs just don't work in our line of work. So I had that. And then, like for me, I had to like, um, when I filed a claim and there was, I think it was 2018, there was some legislation passed that like you had to have X amount of years on the job. And if you had X amount of years on the job, it's considered a line of duty injury, right? And I had like 9 years. I didn't have like the 10 years you needed. Um, so like my fire chief stepped up and like in the litigation, like like stood up for me and said like, no, this is legitimate. Like he was on X calls, like these are pretty noteworthy calls, and he stood up for me, and like that was amazing. Um, and so yeah, I mean, like I had some support, but I think everybody could do better, right? I think we should all strive to do better for our people, because for so long I heard people call me brother, and it's like, then like afterwards when you leave, like you're alone, and it's like, wait, where did that go? So I think we need to start practicing what we preach.
Yep. Yeah, brotherhood, sisterhood, man, it's a common word, eh? But yeah, it's not always there 24/7.
No.
No. Yeah, the reason I asked that about the the post suicide attempt is that I know in BC here, like you mentioned, we're looking at a lot of different ways to support people post, so survivors of suicide attempts, to come back to work and not just be thrown into light duties in an office somewhere and feel isolated once again. They actually are incorporated and kind of brought back onto the team in a very successful way. And I don't know if anyone's doing it yet, but I know there's a lot of action towards making that a reality, where people who are surviving suicide attempts are able to come back to work and be supported in a better way, right? So
Yeah, and I think we need to have that conversation, and support needs to be there
mm-hmm.
for things to keep getting better, right? Because we're I mean, let's be honest, like we're still losing people to suicide at like massive rates, right? And that's a very complex topic. It's not just as easy as like, oh, we just need more support in the workplace.
Sure.
At the same time, I think it's a great approach, like you're talking about, of like keeping people involved. One of Anaheim, I think it was Anaheim Fire Department. They do, like when somebody goes out in like a shoulder injury or mental health, like they have their peer support team checking in on these people like
Mm-hmm.
frequently, and like get them out to do events and do things. Like that is so important, right? Because isolation is a killer.
Yeah. So you mentioned briefly at the beginning about your company, Siento. Love to hear a little bit more about the birth of that and how that kind of came into play, and was that your birth child of development, or is it a co-founded with your partner? And then also, what's the target for? Who's this for, this app?
Yeah, so it started out with like me obviously floundering of like, where am I going to go in my life? And so I wanted to go into technology, like that's kind of where I wanted to head with my career. And so my co-founder, him and I met in Costa Rica. That's part of my story. I lived in Costa Rica for a while, pre-divorce. And then I was just going through, I was very open with this friend group that I made in Costa Rica, where I would like, listen, like I can get depressed sometimes and I might withdraw. Like if I withdraw, like, can you please reach out to me? And like, I was very open, and that was liberating in itself. And so like, I was having a really hard day, and I call up Jay, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to create this app where I can like talk how I feel, like, talk about how I'm feeling right now. And then like the page catches on fire, right? Like that's how everything started. Like obviously
Yep.
things evolved. Um, but what we found is that there's a lot of great things going on with peer support across the United States and Canada. Um, but everybody's doing things differently, and everything's so all over the place. And so what we've done is worked with first responder agencies to like actually build something that their peer support teams can use to help them accomplish their mission, but then to make it also really easy to reach out anonymously for help if you need it, whether it's in your organization or outside of your organization, right? Is anonymity and confidentiality. I think confidentiality, number one, is if you lose that trust within a peer support team, like your team's done, right? So having the ability for people to anonymously reach out, I think, is really important. With mental health, like there's a bunch of different safety nets that we need, right? Like it's not a like one size fits all approach. We're all different, unique individuals with different perspectives and different needs. But the more safety nets that we can have in place to catch people that fall through the cracks is what needs to happen. And at the end of the day, like our team is amazing. It's like Jason, my co-founder, he's from the tech world, doesn't really have any first responder background, but like our technical co-founder, his dad's ex-Chicago PD, so he gets it. He's gone through his own mental health struggles. Or like UI, or user experience person, right? So like how things look. She's amazing at that, but she's also a crisis social worker. So she gets the mental health field. So the team we've built is everybody's dedicated to like improving mental health. And um it's it's like our North Star is like to save a life, right? I feel um God gave me an opportunity to what I thought was a horrible walking away from a job that I loved and I enjoyed impacting people's lives and saving lives. Um, it is giving me an opportunity to hopefully save even more lives than I could as a firefighter and a paramedic.
Love it. So what hole was this filling that was not out there originally for for first responders? What was the gap that you were trying to fill? Is there something you can, pinpoint the gap that was in this service that you're providing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like there's some companies that are out there trying to do great things, and we heard from other first responders that they just weren't happy with, when it comes to peer support specifically, you have so many people trying to do different things. Like, and so like, how can we kind of organize all these things and be able to like manage your team better? And we didn't see a lot of solutions out there to do that. And, to be honest, like in the beginning, our idea flopped because what we thought was what people wanted wasn't, right? And so, I had to like battle my own demons still. And so like luckily I had a really supportive team who was able to step up and talk with firefighters and police and corrections and all these different first responders, of like what do they need, and then the team built it, and it's pretty exciting. We're
Awesome.
expanding pretty quickly.
So is it geared for peer support or individuals or both?
So it's for both, right?
Okay.
So I got to be careful how much I give away, right? Because there's exciting stuff coming out. But yeah, we want it. We want it
We
for
need
the
a
team,
teaser. We need a teaser.
right? Yeah, I'll dangle the carrot. No, I mean, so it's like team management, right? So, um, not every department can afford be like San Francisco Fire Department that has a full-time coordinator, right? And they face their own challenges, right? So how can we take the load off the team, centralize all your processes into one place, and then also make it really easy for an individual to ask for help, right? Whether that be through a clinician or through a peer supporter. And what we found is that like, like resources are great, like, videos and like self-help stuff, like that's great. But like, I mean, I don't know if you had Target Solutions where you were at. I did. We don't want to just be another check of the box, right?
Right.
And so that's why we've kind of um more focused heavily on like the peer support team side of things, but then also the things that matter for an individual that potentially could be in crisis or is near in crisis to get the help they need.
So is this a free service to people, like it's free access to them, or is there subscription, or how many people would have this in their back pocket on their phone right now?
Yeah, so it's basically either typically first responder agency or the union will subscribe annually for their entire agency, including family and retirees as well. Like we talked about retirees, like that's my goal. Like I hope we can like convince some of these departments to like start training not only their staff on like working with retirees, but also getting retirees involved in afterwards being peer supporters and being there for each other. But yeah, so it's at like a department, wide
Yeah.
rollout of things. And we're currently in Washington, Oregon, Alaska, soon to be Florida, North Carolina, Michigan, Yeah, it's crazy. It's
Awesome.
the amount of interest that we've gotten has been overwhelming, but it just shows that there's a big problem, right? Um, some departments don't even know where to start and how to do a peer support team, and they need somebody to help guide them to get that done. And there's tons of great resources, and that's kind of where I view myself at, is like, how can I help connect the right people to not reinvent this wheel, right? Like it's it's and then there's like the departments that have like everything. Like Miami-Dade Fire like has the most robust mental health program out in the country, probably, like
Awesome.
in the United States. Like, so it's all over the place, but there is a big problem for a majority, I would say, majority of departments that don't have large budgets um, to be able to properly manage their team is
Mhm.
just really challenging.
So, Andrew, if you had this in your back pocket on your phone when you needed it, how would your life be different right now?
Um, honestly, I literally, this is all built based on what I want, or I've wanted, right? I what I really like about it is the ability to stay anonymous. I think I would have reached out for help earlier. I was so afraid that I was going to lose my job or people would think differently of me. But if I could have somebody I could reach out to and be anonymous in doing it, um, I think personally, like I would have reached out sooner,
Right.
knowing that there would be no ramifications from it. There would be no, slide of the lip and telling somebody like, oh, Andrew's got this problem going on, right? Um, so yeah, I mean that's a huge factor of it, I think.
That's cool. That's cool. So what kind of message would you want to make sure that you leave the listener right now listening to this podcast? This is the most amazing nugget that Andrew has to share. It would be a shame to not share it with the world today. What would it be?
Well, I think it's gonna be a two-part. I'm not gonna just give you one. Sorry, buddy.
Hey, that's all right. I'm good.
So
I'm
the
good.
number one thing I would tell people is that you need to love yourself, right? One of the best pieces of advice I got was I went to this could be a whole nother topic, but I went to this psychedelic retreat um, that totally changed my life. And one of the guys there was like very impactful and like talk. It was on an all men's retreat, right? So it's all men like talking about feelings and it's. But he goes, I can tell this about you. You don't love yourself enough. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, what I want you to do, challenge you, is to look in the mirror every day and say, I love you. I love you more than I did yesterday. And that was super impactful for me of learning that like I have to be happy and love who I am, as imperfect as I am. And at the same time, like I would say like that ties into like by having that compassion for yourself and others, like realizing in like your darkest moments when like you feel like nothing's going to get better and everything's just going to get worse and life is horrible, like there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you just have to have faith that things are going to get better, because all good times become bad times in life and all bad times become good times. So that would be like my little nugget I would give, that just have faith that things are going to get better, because they are going to get better, and just keep taking steps forward to to live a healthy life and be a good person to the world.
Beautiful. So how do you strengthen your own self-love? Any tips there?
That's a great question. I fail at it all the time. I'm my biggest critic. It just comes down to just doing that a simple thing in the morning,
Hmm.
right? When we talk negative about ourselves and we put these things into our subconscious, it doesn't help us. Even if we're joking. Like I had a friend the other day is like, "Oh, I'm so stupid." I'm like, "Stop saying that." Like, "Oh, I'm just joking." Like, no, you're putting that in your subconscious. So taking that stuff out of our vocabulary and doing something as simple as like looking in the mirror and telling like, "Hey, I love you. Like, I love you more than I did yesterday." Like, whatever it is, like those little steps will then snowball into something more.
Yeah, what you say becomes reality, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Totally.
So two things I want to talk about is Costa Rica for one, and also your psychedelic experience. So Costa Rica, was that a self-care journey that you were going on, or what was the
No, that
story
was
behind that?
my ex-wife, or soon to be ex-wife, unfortunately. Um like that was kind of her dream,
Mm.
and I was leaving the fire service, and it was like, all right, whatever, like let's do it. It's an adventure, it's cheaper to live. Um and it was a very magical place for me, of like where I had to really learn a lot about myself, and stumble of like, I got into like permaculture farming, right? I loved it. I still love it. I miss it. But that was very therapeutic, right? Where I'd be working outside and planting fruit trees and being in nature, and um learning about myself, and listening to audiobooks of like, how can I, get out of depression or whatever,
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so it was a very transformative time of my life, of and I made a lot of mistakes, like within my I have to own destroying my own marriage, right? And it takes two, right? It's obviously, it's not all me, but I have to own my part in really not treating PTSD and not taking things seriously, and taking a lot of things for granted. And so it was a really good opportunity to learn. And then when she left me, that's when I was in another dark place again. And I had a friend who's like, I'll send you this place in Costa Rica. Like, it's just crazy how it happened that that's where I was at already.
Mm.
And he's like, go here, it'll change your life. And so like I literally cold turkey quit all my antidepressants, because you can't be on antidepressants, and it was a stupid decision. Do not do what I did.
Mm.
Um and I totally cold quit. I had quit drinking by that point. I stopped taking those meds, and then about a month later I went to this psychedelic retreat.
And what was your experience there? Was that a positive experience? Because I've heard a lot of first responders kind of getting very interested in this whole psychedelics for treatment of PTSD, trauma, stress, anything like that. And I'm kind of on board that it's not, maybe not for everyone, but I'm definitely on board that it's a tool that people should look into if they need support, right? So, would you say yours was successful or not successful?
Yeah, I mean, it totally changed my
Mm.
life
Wow.
completely, of who I am as a person, how I function. Um, I think the biggest challenge, like especially men face, and I'm not saying our female counterparts in the first responder community don't face this as well, but our ego is our biggest barrier to getting help, right? So when we're in a therapy session, normally we can put up this wall of like, okay, these are uncomfortable feelings that we're about to talk about. I'm not going to talk about this. And that's what I would do. I would just shut down. And so for me, what psychedelics really did, and this is a very uncommon one that you really haven't heard of, but it's called iboga. Um, it totally wiped out my ego, to the point where those all of a sudden, like, it sounds crazy, but like I literally had one of my sessions, I relived my entire life as like an observer. So like
Mm.
not in first person, but like observing like
Wow.
bad calls, and like, so like I can think of like one call. So that I was like a brand new paramedic, just got hired on probation, and my fire chief like assigned a paramedic student to me, right? I should not have had a paramedic student, first of all. It doesn't matter. So we go on this premature baby had just come home from the NICU, and was in cardiac arrest. And I really took that call really hard. Granted, my son was also in the NICU at the time, so there's like
Jeez.
correlation of things going on. But I really took it really hard, and I never figured out why. And like during this like psychedelic experience, what I had done is allowed this, this paramedic student to like attempt to access, right, to get medications on board, and it didn't work, and I let him do it twice, and then we couldn't get anything, and then we had to put it down the tube, which is just futile. Like the chances of them coming back weren't good. And so really what I learned is that like, holy shit, it was the underlying feeling of guilt. Like I felt really guilty about it. And then like reflecting back on like the whole experience is like there's two things that like I found that really I struggle the most from on calls is any call that revolves around guilt or shame, right? Those two like underlying emotions um wrecked me, right? And so it was very, very eye-opening. And then on the flip side of things, like I'd been dealing with lower back pain for over 10 years. 100% gone. Like I don't have it at all.
Wow.
Um, I since I was young, from stuff that had gone on in my life as a kid, like I carried this like pain, like circular pain around my heart in the center of my chest for God knows. I didn't even pay attention to it, and I didn't realize it was a thing until it was gone. And like afterwards, like that was all gone because I literally they say it's like 10 years of therapy in one session. And it's so true because like it's super intense and you're in a safe environment, but like you're able to like process through all these things that you've been avoiding processing your entire life. And um I mean like I had memories like from a young kid that like I asked my mom, like, did this happen? And she's like, how did you remember that? You were two.
Hmm.
But that were brought up in this
Wow.
experience.
Wow.
And like it just really showed me like, I'd quit drinking before I went there, but what I really like it showed me like you were drinking because X, Y, and Z. And it sounds crazy to say like it shows you, but like I can't explain it unless you actually do it. Um, but yeah, it was life changing for me personally. But like you said, it's not for everybody. There are risks that are associated with it, and it's not like something that you do recreationally. Like there was like an emergency room doctor, nurses, staff that would like help keep you safe and make sure it was a supportive environment as you're like going through it. So it's definitely not something I would recommend people do recreationally at all because it
100%.
could be really rough.
Yep. 100%. So you talked about ego. Is that something that was temporarily gone during this treatment, or is your ego gone now? Is that just
Oh
for
no.
clarity?
No,
It
it's
was just temporarily
treatment.
while you're
Like,
going through that,
yeah,
right?
no, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not short to temper anymore. Like a lot about me has changed since I've
Mm.
done that. Um, but it's really in the moment, it just like 100% wipes out your ego.
Wow.
Like and it's yeah, it's crazy. Like it's hard to describe.
And
Uh,
it's cool that you can even remember all this too, right? During your whole treatment, when you're kind of in a whole nother dimension, that you can actually
well, I
recall
mean,
and remember this.
a lot of it too, like afterwards, like I just found like the other day, I don't know where it might actually be over here somewhere. I found my journal.
Mm.
Like I was journaling during it.
Yep.
Like I would like write things down and like yeah, no, it was crazy. So that like kind of
That's
I think
awesome.
helped and then you like reflect on it
Mm.
afterwards. But yeah, no, it
Wow.
was life changing.
Wow. So what's in Andrew's self-care toolbox that you do every single day to make sure that you're showing up to be the best Andrew, the best father? So what's in your to-do list every day?
Yeah, well, it comes like with a lot of failure, right? Like I think it's really important that we speak openly about our imperfections and that we're not perfect and that we're going to continuously fail as humans. And what I really think like that's super simple for everybody to do every day, and that works for me is like to take care of our mind, body, and our spirit, right? So in the morning, first thing you do, do something that's good for your mind. So whether that's, something engaging like reading, like for me, I do meditation. I pray for my spirit or whatever that means for you. I don't think one religion's the way to go. I think whatever you can find faith in outside of yourself is something that you should focus on for your spirit. And then something like for your physical wellness, right? Of just getting your heart rate elevated for even 10 minutes is good. And so yeah, I take care of those three things in the morning, and then I get my coffee and get the day going. But I think just following those like small little principles can be super impactful for people's lives.
Yeah, it sounds like something very attainable, something you could actually do as a routine versus some huge goal that you want to try to do every single day, right? Yeah, love that. And you're on the right podcast because this is all about the mind, body, and spirit of being an elite firefighter, right? So you're on the right podcast.
Well, hopefully somebody, I really hope in like doing this, right, and like sharing my story, and um I really hope that like somebody listening that this can impact, and I'm pretty sure it will. And then hopefully they can go do the same thing and impact somebody else's life. And like that's how we're gonna see change. So yeah, no, I'm glad. I love what you're doing, and I'm really glad that you gave me an opportunity to come here and speak.
Awesome. So what's one question that I haven't asked Andrew yet that you wish I asked you? Anything else popped up in your mind?
Oh, one question you haven't asked me that I wish you asked that has me. Oh, like what are so you talked a little bit about like what I do every day. Um, I think another thing is like when you go through mental health challenges, like you kind of lose the things you love,
Yeah.
right? Um, and it's like for me, like fishing is like therapy. Um, it's what I used to love doing, but then I kind of stopped doing it, right? And so one thing I would say to people is like find that one thing that works for you, and like your body's going to tell you not to do it or that you don't have the energy to do it. Just go fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like just get
Yep.
out there and do it, right? So find out like one thing that can reset you, as long as it's healthy,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
There's like if it's like gambling or
Yeah.
anything bad, like don't do that. But like get outside if that's like going on a hike or whatever it is, like having those things that you can fall back on. And one other thing, like now that I'm on that topic, like one thing that I have in my phone that I'd like to see people replicate, that I learned when I was an inpatient is basically it's before I was ever in crisis, right? Like when I'm in a good state of mind, I go through and I pick out my like contact. Who am I going to call if something bad goes down? What am I going to do? Like here's some tips and tools that work for me. Um, what music am I going to listen to? Right? Like music's been shown to be able to bring you, de-escalate you. So like I call it like an emergency playlist of like songs that I can play that if I'm down can bring me up, or if I'm fight or flight can bring me down. So having that like ahead of time in a game plan, whether you think it's going to be a problem or not, is something that you can go back to. And like when my ex-wife left me and and I was in a bad spot, that's like the first thing I did. I like my friend Rob in Costa Rica took me under his belt. Like he's like, dude, come stay with us. Don't go home. Don't be by yourself. Like they were super impactful. But I started like meditating and doing all the things I went back to like when I was in treatment, like an inpatient facility of like, okay, I need to be doing these things to get healthy, and then like following them. So, and that just all came from having that document in my phone to like fall back on when I was in a
Oh,
shitty place.
yeah. I love
So,
that. That's a great idea.
yeah.
And the cool thing that kind of resonates with me is that in the fire service, we're pretty good at pre-planning things. And that's
Mhm.
what that is. That's a pre-plan for yourself, right? That's
Yep, totally.
a pre-plan of Andrew. Yeah, I love it. That's a great idea. Great tip. Love it. That's a good one. Um, so what's one thing in Andrew's life you need a little bit more support in?
Um, I need to um I need to really be better at accepting help and feeling compliments. Like I've noticed a lot that like I'm really, really resistant to help, right? And it's an area that like I'm trying to like be open to seeking or getting external help when somebody wants to help me. It's like, I think of like as a single dad, right? Like, um, I don't want anybody to help me because I want to show that I can do it myself, right? But is that really the right mentality to be having? Probably not. So that's definitely something I'm trying to work through.
For you. Yep. I can resonate there 100%. I'm guessing that's kind of where the birth of the app came from as well, right? Is that that sensation or the gap you're trying to fill, right? Of being able to ask for help anonymously, confidentially, right? I love it. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's that barrier, right? It's easier to ask for help when nobody knows who's asking for help.
Yep.
You know.
One last question I had on the app, and then we'll kind of find out how we can find this app. Is are you utilizing AI in this at all, or that technology?
Yes and no in small ways, right? Like there's for instance, like right now, I mean, anybody can go download the free version of the app right now, which is just simply a community where you can, anonymously share how you feel. And then we do something called sentiment analysis, which kind of can get your underlying emotions from text of what you could be going through, right? And then starting to try to connect with those. Because that was a thing that like I had to really learn, was to like connect emotions to body sensations. And once you can figure out like the underlying emotions, like I talk about guilt and shame, it's a lot easier to like work through your problems. So that's how we're doing it right now. We have some pretty cool things planned in the future. We don't want to ever replace, or in my opinion, technology should never replace human interaction, right? All technology is a bridge, and to allow people to get to the care they need in an easier way.
Accessibility comes to word, is the
yeah
word, right?
Yeah, you can do it at scale, right? And at the same time, like there's some pretty cool things you can still do with AI that like there's some cool things you can do that we're working on. So no, we'll see where it goes, but
awesome.
If we'd love support, right? If your listeners want to download the app, like I said, it's in the Apple App Store. It's like, just if you type in Siento, I think it'll be like Siento is fine. But then in the Android app store, it needs to be like Siento Share Connect Heal. And I can give you some links for that. But that's free. And then if their departments, if it's something they would want to learn more about, like our peer support management system that we've built, like I can connect them with our team and get that going.
Okay. All that will be down the show notes for everyone who's listening right now. So,
and we're getting a new website. So don't judge the one we built before. So it's totally out of date, and it was done for free by me and my co-founder. So don't judge us.
No judgment here. How can they get a hold of you personally if they want to connect with you on a different level or find out some more information?
Yeah, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. I try to bring value of like, things that have happened to me in my life, and bring forward like things that other agencies are doing very well with mental health and peer support. Or my email is just andrew@siento.io is another good way of getting a hold of me. But yeah, if anybody's ever struggling or has questions or wants somebody to talk to, like I'm always available for that as well.
Awesome. Well, it's been an honor chatting with you, Andrew. I really appreciate you kind of sharing your wisdom and your story, and some great nuggets in there for sure. How would you like to close our episode today? Any final words?
I would just like to tell everybody that our world can use a lot of compassion right now, towards ourselves and everybody else. So have some compassion for the people that are around you, and just try to be nice.
Got that right. Beautiful. Well, Andrew, it's been a pleasure. Hope everyone enjoyed this great episode with Andrew. Until next time, stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.